What's up, guys? It's Josh here, back with another Kansas City Chiefs related video, and today I wanted to talk about someone who has really shown up at training camp and preseason that I think just deserves their whole own video, and that's Jody Fortson. Now, I've talked about Jody Fortson in my past couple videos and my latest podcast episode, well, the first episode of Kingdom Crew, which I do with Lucas Murphy from the Beat of KC and Michael Darcy from KC Sports Report. Please go check it out if you haven't already. We're doing a podcast together now. We talked a lot about Jody Fortson extensively, but I really just wanted to give him really his own video to talk about the progression he's made. And yeah, he has had a really good preseason and training camp so far, but now fans are kind of wondering, could he actually make the roster this time around? Because he's been on for a long time with the practice squad and has not quite gotten that opportunity with the main roster yet. So a lot of people are wondering, is he going to make the main roster? And if he does make the main roster, what could his usage look like? Well, I'm going to talk about all of that right after this. So, Jody Fortson, coming out of Valdosta State College a few years ago as an undrafted free agent and signing with the Kansas City Chiefs, Fortson is always someone that has had a lot of potential, especially because his outlandish size. It's the first thing you notice about him when you see him on the field. He had an impressive first training camp a couple years back. I've mentioned it time and time again. Remember, go watch that Green Bay Packers game where he got a lot of action in the preseason. I believe it was prior to 2018 or 2019. I forget which one exactly, but you can find it if you go looking for it. Anyway, Jody Fortson in that game had a couple really nice grabs, including one for a touchdown, and he also had a nice play on special teams where he forced a fumble with his long arms, and that's one thing that I've always advocated for with Jody Fortson is his special teams ability, because one thing that people argue when giving the edge to guys like Marcus Kemp or Garrett Dieters, because they're these special teams gunners, Dave Tobe, Andy Reid, they love those guys on special teams, but it's kind of disrespectful to Jody Fortson because he's shown to be effective on special teams. Yeah, he doesn't have that same speed as some of those guys, which is also, one of his limitations. He's not very fast, ran like a 4.8 or something like that, which is very slow for a wide receiver. But he makes up for it with his size, like I said, his catch radius, and those long arms and everything. I mean, he can grab a ball, he can poke it out, any of that stuff that you ask him to do. Despite all that, though, Jody Fortson has struggled to make the main roster the past couple of years. And last year with COVID, no real offseason, no training camp or preseason, no preseason, rather. It's been hard for him to try and make his way up the roster. And now this year, it finally looks like he could break through, because it's been really frustrating. Like I said, he couldn't make the roster, and it always seemed like he put on a show at training camp every time, made a ton of circus catches, has shown that progression. And I always said that I don't want to buy in again this year. I don't want to put all this stock into Jody Fortson and then get my dreams crushed again when he ultimately doesn't make the team. And I definitely think going into training camp, Jody Fortson was on the outside looking in. But now I think he may have solidified a roster spot, because if you look at that first preseason game, he, like I said, just used that size, used that catch radius, that physicality. The size advantage he has over everyone is insane. Even though he may not have the athletic traits of some other guys, it's just the size, man. You fall in love with it. And I feel like the Chiefs, it would be a disservice if they didn't find a way to utilize someone like Jody Fortson. Now, my guy Daniel Harms over at RGR Football has pointed out many times that the Chiefs kind of neglect receivers that have the ability to go up and get 50-50 balls, just using receivers' strengths. They're more of a speed and precision offense, right? They don't really use guys like that, like Chris Conley, who was physical and can go up and get a ball. They never really utilize that. But I feel like Jody Fortson has his strength is so much going up and getting a 50-50 ball that like they have to use that, like just throw it to him in the red zone. He's going to come down with it 90% of the time because there's just nothing a defender can do with that. He's got the frame of Calvin Johnson. Now I want to be careful with my words because Jody Fortson isn't Calvin Johnson, not even close. But I guess a closer example would be Chase Claypool. And again, Jody Fortson doesn't have the athletic traits of Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool is much faster. He had a great combine, remember? But the Chiefs would use him in a similar way that they would have used Chase Claypool if he ended up in KC. And again, RGR Football, they do great work. Go subscribe if you're not already. Ryan Tracy. Chase Claypool was one of his draft crushes back then because he wanted the Chiefs to use him kind of as that wide receiver tight end hybrid. And that's how the Chiefs are looking to use Jody Fortson now. He's kind of teetered on the depth chart as a wide receiver or tight end, but now they have him going full-time tight end. And I think a lot of that is because Jody Fortson has progressed as a blocker. And it's also because that's probably the only way they're going to be able to keep him on roster if they decide to, because there's already a ton of receivers that look like they're going to make the roster. The competition there is very tough, but Jody Fortson can make the roster as a tight end, and I think he's going to. I think at one point a lot of people thought that Jody Fortson was kind of the odd man out because the Chiefs, they drafted Noah Gray, who obviously is going to make the team. They have high hopes for him. Travis Kelce, he's not going anywhere. And then there's Blake Bell, who Jody Fortson might have more upside than a Blake Bell, but Blake Bell, you know what he is. He gives you the blocking that maybe Kelce and Gray don't give you. So, they want to keep him as kind of that blocking tight end. Andy Reid loves him. Does Jody Fortson do enough to beat him out for a roster spot? I think that was always kind of the concern because it's like, well, we don't expect them to carry 4 tight ends, but looking at some of these other position groups and how they're shaking out, I think there's an increasing possibility that the Chiefs keep 4 tight ends, especially because they like so much of what they've seen out of Fortson that it kind of puts pressure on them to keep 4 tight ends. And I do think Fortson's receiving upside kind of outweighs maybe the shortcomings in his blocking because he's not a natural blocker. He's a natural receiver. I mean, he played receiver in college. That's more so what he's used to. But something interesting that Lucas from the Beat of KC pointed out to me in our last podcast is the Chiefs have been running this formation at training camp called Rhino, and it's where they have 3 tight ends on the field, including Jody Fortson. Now, if the Chiefs do plan on using Rhino at any point next season, and where you have 3 tight ends on the field, I think it's going to be important to keep 4 tight ends because if any of those guys gets hurt, well, then you can't run Rhino anymore. And I think Rhino is an interesting formation that opens up a lot of things. It's a change of pace where you have 3 tight ends on the field and you got just really big options like Fortson and Kelce and Gray on the field at the same time. Like, could you imagine what you could do with that if those guys progress like we think they can? That would be something really fun to watch. And the possibility of the Chiefs drawing up plays for Jody Fortson excites me because they have featured him a lot in training camp and the preseason. You saw in the preseason game, kind of like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, like that one-handed catch. He looked fantastic, and you can tell he's put on some muscle too, which makes him more dangerous. He's gotten even bigger. He's a physical guy. He already was a physical guy. And then in training camp, he made a lot of good catches. I know in the last practice, he had one that got knocked out by Willie Gay after the fact, but it was a really nice catch. He seems to be getting open a little bit easier than he did before. He's learning how to get more natural separation, in my opinion, just from watching him. And I'm going to be really looking forward to seeing what Fortson can do in the next preseason game, and I expect the Chiefs to ramp up his opportunities in the next preseason game. I think he'll get more of a shot, and we'll really see what he can do and going up against some of the other guys instead of just the backups and the backups to the backups in the preseason game. But it definitely seems like Jody Fortson has made the jump. He took this past offseason really seriously, wanted to make the leap where he impresses the Chiefs coaching staff enough to where they have no choice but to keep him because he offers such a unique skill set. He can play either wide receiver or tight end, and I do think he has the capabilities to play on special teams and maybe knock someone else off the roster. because he also is sufficient on special teams. I gotta say, I am completely buying all of the Jody Fortson stock and not looking back. I know I did that last year and I ended up getting hurt. Same thing with the year before, but I'm doing it again and I'm not looking back because I really truly think Jody Fortson gets his chance this time. No more of these Garrick Dieter call-ups, no more of these other guys that seem to be getting opportunities over him before. It's Jody Fortson's time, and I think most fans would agree with me that Fortson deserves a shot. So that's pretty much all I got for today's video. Really just wanted to give Jody Fortson his props for the things he's done this offseason and in training camp and in preseason. But I want to hear from you guys. What are your opinions on Jody Fortson? Do you think he makes the team? And what do you think his usage looks like for next season? If he does, in fact, make the team, I expect him to get some run. Maybe not that much because the Chiefs have other guys that they've invested a little bit higher in than Jody Fortson. But I definitely think Jody Fortson is going to get some opportunity next year. But let me guys know what you think in the comments. And all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and kckingdom.com. Peace.